Welcome to another episode of the InnerFight podcast. My name is Marcus Smith, founder of InnerFight.com. I'm joined in this episode by our endurance coach, endurance guru, Kona World Ironman Championship finisher, and Great British sprint distance triathlete Neil Flanagan to debunk the world of triathlon. No matter where you are in the world, thanks for tuning in. Let's jump right in. It's been a while, but here he is, the return of the endurance machine, the man that makes people do things for an incredibly long time. Sometimes, some of them a bit quicker. Flanners,
what introduction.
Welcome back to the show. This time, not just as an extra or on a phone-in, but 1 hour. We might make it just 40 minutes. We'll see how we get on.
Compress that.
Of full endurance geekery. Mate, before we kick this off, because sometimes you're a little bit under the radar, you're a little bit quiet. Just explain to people your entry into the world of endurance and how this all came around and how you got into triathlon, etc.
It started when I first came to Dubai, probably 9 years or so ago now, and did the usual thing that everybody does when they first come to Dubai, got stuck into some brunches and the usual sort of business. Gained, I'm not going to say one, but maybe two of the Dubai stones that are quite common.
Yeah.
And just, I'd swam at a pretty high level as a kid and just started doing some swimming just to keep me out of the pub, really, to be honest, more than anything. And that became quite addictive, and then I got involved in a swim-run race.
Right. Which
went well, and then the next thing was like, oh, there's another one just in a couple of months that's got a bit of a bike in it.
Yeah.
Did that, and then the next thing, I was training 15 hours a week, and
wow.
And literally I went from nothing 2008, I think. 2011 I was in Kona, so it was a fairly short cycle.
Let's just it's quite interesting what you said there, mate. For me, like you got in the pool and then suddenly there was a swim bike race, and it seems that the sport of triathlon over the last sort of 10 years here in the region has really picked up, mate. Like there's a lot of stuff available. Talk us through the scene and what's actually going on.
Yeah, the sport has gone ballistic, to be honest. I mean, I remember, racing even 3 or 4 years ago, and you'd be lucky if you got 50 people there at some random resort at Gantoot.
Yeah.
And now, these local races, they're capping the entries at 300, and they sold out almost overnight. It's literally, the sport has gone nuts, and it's cycling, triathlon, endurance sports generally, and the facilities here are mind-blowing.
Why do you think that is, mate? Is it a sport that's like easy to get into?
I think at its basest form, if you think about what you need for a triathlon, probably some running shoes, a pair of goggles, and some Speedos. Which
mandatory.
Which I know appeals to you a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a bike. And really, you don't need to spend a lot of money on stuff to get around and to get fit.
Yeah.
And then, of course, being in Dubai, people here perhaps have slightly more disposable income than other parts of the world.
Right.
And they see the shiny bikes and people riding them pretty quickly and think that must be the key to going fast. I can spend money on carbon and go really fast immediately.
We'll get into the bikes and the bits and how much money you can spend on this sport, because I as you've rightly said, people do tend to blow a serious amount of cash on it. I look forward to speaking about that a bit later on. But I mean, there's literally, if we look at the calendar, when does the obviously we're challenged here with the weather for the international listeners. Obviously in summer we're quite quiet here. How does the triathlon calendar work here?
So the season opener this year was on the 17th of October, the Roy Nasser Memorial Race at JLL, and really I think mid-October is about as early as early as you can do
as
it.
early as you can start.
Because it's just too hot.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I mean, it's even October's hot, but so it runs from really usually sort of middle of October all the way through to, I think the last race of the season last year was right at the very end of April.
Right.
And for the same reasons, and it gets too hot over the summer to race safely.
And what do we see? Do we generally see something every weekend, or is it every second weekend, or?
I mean, if you think now, within Dubai there have been 2 half iron distance races, one in November, one in January just gone. There's one in Bahrain sandwiched in between those, and then there's local races, Mamza Park, the JLL series. You've got the duathlon series out at Hamdan. There's honestly, if you wanted to just race every weekend, you could find something for sure.
I'm sure we'll hear some of your thoughts on racing every weekend and really putting yourself through it. But mate, I think let's go back to the start. I mean, how you started and how people generally start, and if listeners are thinking about it, like, what's the way that people? You said it. You sort of started swimming, and then there's a swim run.
Yeah.
But what's the way now? There's so many resources out there. There's magazines. There's the internet. There's different coaching bodies.
Yeah.
Like, how does it start really?
I think there's almost, we're at the stage now where there's information overload, and
Right.
you might have seen it yourself, where you could put a post out onto a. Well, I can name it. Like the Try to Buy is a local Facebook group, and you could put a question. For example, what's the best protein powder onto that
Right.
group, and you'll get 100 different answers from 100 self-proclaimed
Within
experts.
a very short period of time.
Like
eh?
literally, if you made the mistake of being the first responder on that, your inbox is like it's like machine gun fire coming in.
Right.
So I tend to avoid those, to be honest. But there's almost information overload, and I think most people make it way too complicated in the very beginning. If you, as a golden rule, if you were on your bike twice a week, if you were running twice a week, and if you were swimming twice a week, you probably make progress in that first 6 to 12
Right.
months.
So you're talking about 2 sessions
Of each discipline
so
per week.
6 workouts a week.
Yeah.
Wow.
If you could throw in a little bit of core and strength work as well, even better. So,
Even better,
so
right.
straight away, and I think this is where people come to us from who are, let's say, marathon runners or runners, and they're used to training 3, 4, 5 times a week with a couple of rest days, and all of a sudden, you're training twice a day some days, and maybe you'll get one rest day if you're really lucky. And the volume of training is much, much higher for multisport than it would be for for single sport disciplines.
Yeah. Do you think some people jump into triathlon thinking that like we've made it quite easy so far? You can swim, you can bike, you can run. They're all pretty basic things that we do. Do you think a lot of people jump into it not really fully understanding the time commitments and sort of what it really takes?
Yeah, I think they do, and I think, I was speaking to a lady yesterday, and I don't care really whether you're willing to commit 20 hours a week to the sport or 5 hours a week to the sport, which I think would be a fairly bare minimum. But your goals have to be aligned with your commitment. If you're training for an Ironman and you can only commit 5-6 hours a week to training, you're not going to Kona,
right?
And you're not getting around that Ironman course quickly.
Yeah.
So just be realistic. You have to look at what, and it's not all about how much volume you're doing, how much everyone else is training, all the rest of it. But be realistic with, if your longest ride going into an Ironman race is 90 kilometers, then 180 is going to feel like a long way.
Mate, you just, and I forgot to get this out the way in the introduction, but you just touched on it. Kona in 2011 was a race that you raced.
Yes.
That's the World Championships.
Yep.
It's the pinnacle of the Ironman calendar. Everyone sort of works towards it. It's the longest distance. It's probably the hardest course in the world. It's
up there, yeah.
It's up there. And mate, you sort of, in a very short time from 2008 to 2011, you got to that stage. Talk us through sort of what that was like and how you did it, really, because I think that's super interesting for people.
Yeah, I mean, the experience itself was incredible, and I think, as you say, it's like, for me, when I started triathlon, I had some pretty big goals in terms of what I wanted to achieve, and one of them was to go to Kona, and one of them was to represent Great Britain at some level. And so I had a fairly fortunate set of circumstances that leaded to me qualifying for Kona, which was I actually qualified through a half iron distance event in August 2011.
How does that work, though?
So they basically, in that year, Ironman China and Ironman Japan had gotten cancelled for different reasons. So they had slots available for the World Championships.
Right.
And of course they want people to go because it's money.
Right, and it fills the race.
So, yeah, it fills the race. So they basically at the last minute gave some slots to the 70.3 Philippines race.
Right.
Which was great because it was already sold out at that stage, so there were no last minute ringers or anything else coming in. It was actually my first half distance race, so I rocked up, finished third in my age group.
Wow.
And then 6 weeks later was in the Big Island for the big dance. It was a bit emotional, that 6 weeks, to be honest.
Yeah, I was going to say, mate, because you've briefly touched on, and we're going to speak a lot more in detail about the time commitment.
Yep.
But you're training for an Ironman, like you said, just before, 5 hours is not enough. You need some decent time. How does your life sort of change when you're going to the World Championships and you're training for something that is such a long race? I mean, it's the longest.
Yeah, I mean, well, you would have sort of seen me around at that time and probably looked a bit gaunt and haggard most of the time. I mean, to put it in context, I think, I was training, I think I was on my bike, I was doing like 350 kilometres of cycling a week, probably 70 or 80 kilometres of running a week, and probably 20, 25 kilometres of swimming a week.
Wow.
And that adds up to a lot. And it's not only that, it's the time travelling to and from, Al
from
Qudra and Gantu and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
So it's a monumental commitment, and I think the people that do it get my total respect, but you have to enlist the support of your family, wives, kids, because it's
just get rid of them.
Or get rid of them.
Yeah. Which a lot of people do. I say that quite flippantly, mate, but a lot of people sort of do. A lot of people just end up being quite lonely in a sport like triathlon.
It's totally selfish.
Yeah.
At Ironman, and I think to go back to where that perhaps the original question, I think I wouldn't call it a mistake, but the people come into the sport and they immediately want to go sprint Olympic, 70.3 Ironman, and it's a logical, natural progression. But for me, if people learnt to go quickly over a sprint distance first and then added volume, because if you're already slow and you're having to do long, slow rides, long, slow runs, it just gets like 150k if you're doing 20k an hour. It's a long ride. Yeah. Whereas if you're already reasonably quick and you're doing that at 32, 33k an hour, it's almost half the time. So for me, if people would learn to be technically efficient, and physically strong and actually reasonably quick over sprint Olympic distance, and then take the step up, it would be, I think, a lot more fun of an experience for them.
So you're preparing for it. You've got 6 weeks. Training's off the charts.
Yeah.
It's the first time you've raced across this distance.
Yeah.
How does that blend in? Or does it blend in mentally? I think your body probably doesn't get a chance to, you're just in this sort of tsunami of, you said, 300 Ks a week cycling, 70 Ks a week running. How do you mentally deal with it?
My feet never touched the ground for that whole 6 weeks. And to be honest, because of the way I'd qualified, and for me it was it was potentially a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I went to race it, which, if I was coaching somebody that went with the attitude that I went with, I'd be going absolutely nuts.
Right.
I literally went and had a red-hot crack at it, and I was happy to accept that if the wheels fell off on the day, which they actually did in the end, so be it. I could sleep for an hour and walk around and get through the cut-off. So for me, you could see actually the 2011 highlight video from Kona. You can see me on the front line at the swim start.
Just so keen.
Just get involved.
I'm going to win the swim, then I'm going to win the bike.
I wanted to win everything.
And I have no respect for any of the pros.
But sometimes when you hear the professionals say, the first time racers at Kona actually do quite well because they don't fear it. And I had absolutely no fear. I went and just, I went and swam hard. I biked way too hard and ran great for 15k, which is fairly typical. And then it all unraveled. But I was happy to accept that.
That was the sort of bet that you took.
Yeah. And just to see what would happen. Now, obviously, that's not a strategy I would recommend for any of my guys doing their first time, man, because it's not fun. Yeah. Once you've hit that wall and you've kind of run out of calories and all the rest of it, it's not a nice experience.
What is the strategy, though, mate? Because I'm sort of you're speaking through that, and you're saying, for first timers, it is actually sometimes your best race because you don't know what's coming, you don't know where that pain is or where that wall is. Isn't that almost a better position to be in, or what? Sort of how do people deal with that? And are you seeing people going back for a second bite of the apple and actually getting a worse time than the first? How does it all add up?
Yeah, and I think to a certain degree, ignorance is bliss. But you'll see some of the stuff that we have in Training Peaks. The metrics and the sort of the race strategy is generally fairly clear for most people. So depending on whether you're working with power or heart rate or whatever you're working with, you'll have a clear race strategy for output, because calorie consumption drives the finish of your race.
Right.
If you run out of calories, your race is over.
Calories being the energy that
Yep.
you're burning to get to the finish line, right?
So we tend to err marginally on the side of caution with
Right.
people, and I'm quite happy to tell anyone, if you've still got plenty of gas in the tank left with 10k of the run, then go
Just hammer it.
go for your life.
Yeah,
And-
yeah, yeah.
and so far today, I haven't seen that happen.
You didn't see my file from MDS. I did exactly that. Last 8k, we were flying at about 4-minute Ks.
on the pain train. Yeah.
Exactly.
But it's a long day. I mean, for most people, most people don't. 12 hours is an aspirational time to get around. And so
Right.
you're a long day to be moving
Yeah.
non-stop. And so, we everyone has a plan, and like the man says, it's great to have a plan until you get punched in the face.
Yeah.
And then, to be honest, it's about survival.
Right.
And you're into the aid stations. It's Coke, it's pretzels, pickle juice, whatever you can get. Yeah,
Pickle juice.
Yeah, true story.
Sounds so good. Yuck.
It's a great cure for cramp, apparently.
Yeah.
And I think your body screams out and tells you what you need, and you just pick it up and
pick
go
that
for
kind
it.
of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mate, let's look at it from a beginner's point of view.
Yep.
Now, there's a bunch of clubs in town.
Yep.
There's a bunch of different ways. I'm going to put this out there. It's controversial, but I see a lot of people just absolutely fucking this up
Yep.
royally.
Yep.
I see people totally out of shape,
Yep.
running for way too long, getting bad knees, getting bad calf problems.
Yep.
I see people not enjoying. This is what I see from an outsider's point of view, and I see people not enjoying their training. I hear people telling me, I've got this," and they're not like. Genuinely, I get excited about training. All the training that I've ever done, all the biking that I've ever done, running, gym work. I'm actually super excited about the session. Where are people at when it comes to sort of starting triathlon and this whole mental cock up?
This is okay. Don't get me started on this.
Mate, let's talk about it, because I think a lot of the time it's like you said. I think someone put something out on a group on Facebook, and you've got 100 professionals.
Yep.
Actually, they're not professionals. They're desk jockeys that hate their jobs,
Yeah.
so they spend more time on Google
Yeah.
forming an opinion that most of the time is absolute horseshit.
And they're all rubbish triathletes.
And they're all not very good at triathlon. So where are we? Like, what the fuck is going on?
This is and the conversation I have with almost all athletes that we take on new, and we're all kind of in a fight and show no weakness and all the rest of it. And it's like people are like, "Oh, that plan's really easy," and it's like,
Right.
yeah, it is, because you know what? It's not meant to be hard. Every
Right.
session cannot be
Right.
full on. So if you're trying to, like for me, there are two things that drive your endurance performance. You've got your aerobic capacity,
Yeah.
and you've got your speed or power threshold. Okay,
Right.
if the session you're working on is not driving either one of those two forwards,
Yeah.
you're wasting your time and making
Right.
yourself tired,
Right.
and there's no benefit. Okay,
Right.
so if you're trying to increase your aerobic capacity, you should be training aerobically, which for most people means really slowly.
So I mean, people generally understand heart rate, mate,
Yep.
and people generally know sort of 220 minus your age is your sort of top figure,
Yep.
thereabouts. What if we were to do a percentage of that? You say this aerobic capacity. What are we looking at as a percentage of sort of max?
I mean, everyone's different because of their physiology and the way they've
For
trained.
sure,
but
yeah.
as a golden rule, I mean, the maximum aerobic function is 180 minus your age.
Right.
There's a whole philosophy behind that,
Yeah.
which is give or take right. So if you're my age,
yeah,
no,
incredibly old.
knocking on a little bit.
Yeah.
Like I run with my heart rate around 135 to 140, and it's not
Right.
quick,
Right.
but I'm generating aerobic capacity.
Right.
Most people, and this perhaps to answer your question, most people do their long, slow stuff
Yeah.
way too fast
Right.
and put stress on their body
Right.
and want to eat all the buffet, both
Yeah,
like
because it
twice
makes
a
you
day,
hungry.
because it makes you hungry, because
Yeah.
you're burning a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
And they're tired, and then as a consequence, they go and do a set of intervals or something the next day, and it's dog shit. Like, it just
because they can't get the
because they're
intensity.
tired, yeah.
So if we let's take you, mate, and let's look at
Yep.
a bit. Get a bit geeky on the numbers.
Yep.
We say you're just over 40, so let's go with 40. So
Yep.
220 minus your age is 180, and then minus your age again, we're at 140.
Yep.
So what you're saying here is your sort of aerobic capacity building runs you're doing nothing much above that 140 mark.
Well, I won't go above it.
Right.
It's a totally conversational pace. So if you're running and you can hold a conversation, then even if you don't have a heart rate monitor, it's likely that you're aerobic. If you can, assuming your nose is okay, if you can breathe through your nose, you're likely to be aerobic. So, I can run if I'm fit. I can run sub 40 minutes for 10k. I rarely run at more than 6 minutes a k aerobically because it's just like it's no stress on my body. I can do that day after day after day after day.
And that builds for us an aerobic base.
That is your fitness.
Right.
Okay.
And so I like the example you used. Like today you've done that aerobic run.
Yep.
You're around 135, 130 heart rate. Tomorrow I want intervals, or you want intervals from me. What can we, let's take your heart, let's take your stats. You would do, let's stay on running because I think people sort of can connect with that quite easily. If we stay on running, what would be the other session that you spoke about, the high intensity stuff and the aggro?
Threshold development. Okay,
right.
So let's say, for example, if my 10k running speed is 345 per k.
Yeah, let's say.
Give or take.
Okay.
Which it might be. Give or
Some
take.
listeners might be okay with that, others might not be.
Whatever it is. Let's say it's 4 minutes a k, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is to kind of, like, and again, I'm not trying to kill myself or you with every session. We just want to work in and around that threshold. So, so I might do, let's say, a bunch of, intervals at and control it around that pace.
Yeah.
But with very, very short rest cycles, so your recovery is incomplete between efforts.
Right.
So that as if you do, let's say 10, it doesn't matter what the session is, 10 800s at 4 minutes a k pace with 30 seconds rest in between, your heart rate is going to be continually peaking higher and higher and higher, which is kind of what you'd see in a race.
Yeah, right.
If you were running steady, just without the little dips.
Yeah.
And this is where I think, I saw somebody who was running the other day, 6 times 5 minutes at flat out and 5 minutes recovery, and I just think, like, how does that help if you're running a 1k race? Awesome, or a 2k race, it's great, but how does that help to cover 10k or half marathon? It's just,
so you're trying to build into the distance that they're running across. Right. Okay. And mate, let's look at, so you mentioned on the pace there. And it gets progressive. So if we're doing, let's take your example. We're doing 800s. And what would you do if we did 6 800s, for example? What would we expect percentage-wise based on that heart rate? What would we expect to be heading towards for example, set 6, 7, and
it would
8,
be
or 4, 5, and 6? Sorry,
I would expect it to be above 90%.
Right.
Of your maximum
so that's the
heart rate.
business. And that's the building of the threshold.
That's the thick end of the work.
And because you touched on it before, mate, about recovery and about performance related to recovery. If you run sort of a long, slow run too high, then you're not recovered for the next day. After a session, that sounds pretty tough, because if we're for the last 3 of 6, so 50% of the time we're at 90% threshold heart rate. What are we looking at for a recovery time?
In a perfect world, you'd want a day off afterwards.
Really? That, you should have pushed so hard that you want to have the day off.
But we don't live in a perfect world, and triathlon being a multi-sport, so then the programming becomes the question of, okay, well, what easy session can, so you might go through a cycle of, easy run, a hard bike, recovery swim, a hard run, recovery bike, so that's where the sort of the programming becomes quite difficult to fit all the pieces together, so that you're never smashing yourself 2-3 days on the track. But
that's why people should get a proper coach, like you, and pay you a reasonable amount of money, actually quite cheap,
very cheap,
you know how to put it in the right order, and not only that, based on the results that they're getting for those, and we'll jump into the tracking in a minute, because that's, as we both know, that's what we both love the most. You can adjust it. And so that's probably where people are going the most wrong, without trying to hard sell you, which I should really sell you, because you're actually very good at it. But it's like they wonder why they're not getting the results, because their body's just not recovering at all.
I can't keep my heart rate under control when I run slowly, and then I can't find the intensity when I'm trying to run hard, and it's like, it's because you're too tired. Just take 2 days off and come back.
So, mate, let's make this easy for the masses. We've jumped into something that's quite serious, the sort of overtraining and not recovery. What is programming 101 for that then? Is it like, we've gone through a scenario, let's build this week. We've started with a gentle run.
Yep.
We know that the next day we're then able to do these 6-800s and go absolutely balls to the wall. We're at 90%. We're suffering. It's awesome. It's a real tough session. Sleep really well. What would I expect the next day?
I mean, you'd go through
if I couldn't have a rest day, obviously.
Yeah. So you ideally would sort of cycle through easy days and hard days consecutively. I think that would be the easiest way to sort of put it out there to the masses. Most people will do the bulk of their work over the weekend because that's when they have time. So typically rest day will either precede that or follow it, depending on, like Thursday is the day at work when it all goes to rat shit, if it's going to go to rat shit.
Yeah.
So it's like, take a day off Thursday, weekend training, and then you're into it. So you just don't want heavy sessions following each other consecutively.
Right.
And particularly, and I speak from experience, if I do a real hard interval session at night, late, I can't sleep.
You can't sleep.
I can't sleep.
There's too much of everything. There's every hormone is just everywhere. It's so mate, a lot of that, I guess, for the layman, heart rate is probably the most practical way to track all of this stuff.
Yes.
And to check it. Obviously, one of the measures that we like to use is waking heart rate.
Yep.
Because a lot of people will say, "Am I recovered?" and stuff, and that's one that's good. But people will be able to see it. So if you're going one day sort of max effort, high heart rate, the next day it should be
easy,
a nice something a bit steady, be it a swim, be it a bike, or something like that.
Yep.
Mate, let's jump into how you track all of this stuff and what I know there's a shitload of data, and so tell us about how you track it and how you can develop an athlete through the accessibility to that data.
So we have within sort of swim, bike and run, there are some testing protocols which we can use to assess your current level of ability, fitness, speed, whatever you want to call it. And so for swimming, it's critical swim speed, which I did a test yesterday, which was pretty decent. I was quite happy with that.
Good. I hope it's no faster than mine.
It was slightly faster than yours.
Of course.
For biking, if you are not lucky enough, if you've bought a power meter, if you've taken some time to invest that, then it's functional threshold power, which means the maximum amount of power that you can deliver to your pedals for an hour.
Right.
There's a test for that, and then running, there's some simple run test. I mean, you could do like a 3K time trial for a run test, and that's pretty relevant.
Right.
And so once you know where people are at, then it's a question of, and again, this is where I think, the a good coach adds value, is to say, okay, fine, where within, so if we look at bike power, for example, somebody like yourself is likely to be stronger at the short end of the power scale, 1 and 5 minute efforts than let's say an hour.
Right.
Somebody who has gotten off the sofa, in their mid to late 30s, has gone and ridden long and never done any short intervals, is likely to be stronger at the 20-minute, 1 hour end of that power sort of curve, if you will, than the 1 and 5. So for you, I'd be prescribing longer efforts, and for the guy that's just got off the sofa, short efforts, right? Short maximal efforts. And I think sometimes people almost get bogged down in volume and like, it's a long race, I've got to do long rides. But if you don't actually generate any power, you're going slowly all the time. It's miserable. So you have a measure of each discipline, and for me it's a question of saying, okay, fine, where do we need to improve within that discipline? Is it endurance or is it power?
Right.
And what sessions do we need to make that happen?
So there's different sessions that we program and different phases of a program to develop one or the other.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. And ideally both at the same time, but that's pretty tricky. So
is that like the equation of losing fat and building muscle simultaneously?
Exactly.
Right. So you just want everything basically. That's okay too.
I don't want to be better looking as well.
Yeah.
But hang on
and
a minute.
Haircut.
Yeah. So we can work on one thing at a time.
Right.
And for most people, they just lack blunt force, to be quite honest.
Right.
And if your 5 minute maximum power is 200 watts.
Yes.
Your 20-minute and 1 hour is never going to be any more than that.
Right.
And it needs to be, if you're a male of more than average weight, it needs to be way more than that.
To enter the male category, it should be more. Right, I get it. Yeah.
It should be a minimum standard.
So if you're a male listening and you don't have a 200 watts FTP, please get one.
I've gone pretty low there just to keep most people involved.
Yeah, I actually think anything under 300's not. No, just kidding.
But you know what I mean? It's like your 1 hour, 3 hour, 5 hour power is limited by if your 5 hour power, the 5 minute power is pathetic.
Yeah, then
which a lot of people's is, then your long term power is not going to be good either.
Right.
And that, that might sound quite blunt, but it's just how it is.
Yeah.
And it's the same with your running speed. If the fastest you can run 1 kilometer is 6 minutes, your marathon time's never going to be under 4 hours. It's not possible.
It's going to be tough, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
So
what do you use to? How do you make good use of all this data? How do you collect it, and how do you? So we've got those 3 benchmarks, one across each sport.
Yep.
That we want, the time it takes you to, for example, run 3K. We've got your functional threshold power on a bike, and we've got your critical swim speed.
Yep.
What do you then do once people have sort of jumped in and said, "Yep, this is it, and these are my marks"? What do we do? How do we manage it? How do we collect it? How does that work?
So people usually have some sort of GPS tracking device that they use to monitor and measure their training. So
essential.
Yes.
Difficult to give them a good program without it.
It's difficult to track it.
Yeah.
Because people's feedback's usually rubbish.
It usually bollocks. And mate, just on those devices, most affordable or best bang for your buck that you're seeing out there these days, what should people be picking up?
Multi-sport watches. Can I mention brand names?
You can mention a brand name.
Garmin 910, or its sexier sister, the 920, which is the new model. 910 is, I use it myself. It's absolutely perfect. Does everything you need. Swim, bike, run. Tracks all of it.
Can't believe you've not mentioned the one that I'm wearing. Do I have to get a new one?
I don't like that one
Phoenix
personally.
3?
If you're happy
only because
with
it doesn't come off and stick on your thing. That's because I've got another one.
I'm sure you could probably make that happen too.
Do you reckon you could? I don't think you can actually, mate. Anyway, so a Garmin seemed to be. I mean, we've used all different ones, haven't we? We've used Polar, we've used Sunto.
Yep.
We sort of everything. Garmin seemed to.
I tell you, the primary reason I like Garmin is because over Polar.
Yeah.
Is because it auto syncs to Training Peaks.
Polar now syncs to Training Peaks
manually.
Are you sure? Really? Is it Sunto? Sunto changed.
Yep.
Anyway, that's a different subject. Training Peaks is where it all happens, though.
So Training Peaks is our training delivery method. So people go into a session, they record it all on their watch, they upload it into their Garmin Connect account, and it appears magically in Training Peaks. And I'll basically look, and so I'm not looking to either criticize or it's not like a Big Brother is watching things. Like for me, I'm looking to see if there's any way that somebody could approach a session to achieve better results.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
So if you've got a bunch of intervals that should be done at X pace, and the first one's been done 30 seconds too fast, and you've blown out halfway through the session.
Yeah.
I can let people know about that because people don't typically look at the sessions themselves, and not that's why they pay me.
Yeah, and then would you take that session the next time, or maybe give it to them as a retest and just adjust those sort of speed, stroke intensities?
Yeah, exactly. So there's a finite amount of variety you can create with swim, bike, run programming, and so for me it's just a question of saying, okay, let's say if you did 2 months ago a 10 by 800 session at 4 minutes a K pace,
right.
If we can now do that at 350 per K pace, we've made progress.
Right.
If you've done it at 450 and it's gone backwards.
That simple, right? Isn't this, mate, we spoke about it before, people overcomplicating things. I mean, that's pretty much like the simplicity of it. I know it doesn't just happen. You don't just go from doing 10Ks at 4 minute Ks to 350s or even to 355s. There's a lot of work and there's a lot of programming that goes into it. But if you're not tracking that, if you're not measuring that, if you're not accountable towards that and actually able to show the difference, like how do you know if you're going forwards or backwards?
You don't.
Right.
You don't. And that's the thing. It's like we've got. People are like, oh, that test's really hard. It's like, but that's how you know whether you're getting faster. Like you spend 5 hours a week on your bike. Don't you want to know if you're getting faster or not?
Yeah.
Or, you're 3 hours at Hamdan every week and driving out there and back. Like for me, I want to know if I'm, and this guy that I'm paying who's making me suffer every week, am I actually getting better at this?
Getting better. Do you think people are perhaps a little bit afraid to 100% track their data due to perhaps some like failure, shortcoming? Like if you write it for me, and I guess this is more the psychological side of it, if you write it for me and, you know, let's use it, you want me at 3:45 a K pace for those 600-800s, and life is what it is. I've had a hard day at the office or I've traveled. Am I disappointed that I'm delivering 350 a minute Ks, or well, how do you think that whole sort of psychological aspect works?
Yeah, and I think this is the perhaps where experience perhaps plays, you know, like paces and wattages and swim speeds, all the rest of these things are guidelines, and you'll you know, you have days when you snatch 100 kilos, maybe.
I've never snatched 100 kilos, but I will one day.
You have good days. Some days you're the hammer and some days you're the nail, right? So you know, I think people have, you know, if by the time you work with me for a couple of months, you kind of understand what I'm trying to do with a particular session.
Yeah.
If that has to be, if you have to take 10 seconds per K off or 10 watts off a session to make it work, then you make it work. Yeah, you know, if you've had a shitty night's sleep and no breakfast, and I'm asking you for VO2 max efforts on the bike, it's going to be tough. Yeah. So,
but on the flip side of it, mate, if you program me 345s and I'm dropping in at 341s, still on the sixth effort, there's of course a lot of motivation in that as well.
I'm happy, yeah, for sure. And then you know, your next set of targets for that session would not be 345.
I was going to say, what happens in that situation though? Because it's almost like I just end up getting screwed over, because I do a good session, I'm super happy with it, and the next time I come to do a similar session, suddenly my 10k pace you've decided is 340, and I'm in hell again.
FTPs have been known to shift
manually
midweek without testing. Mormon will attest to that. Pink Taxi blogger's favourite quote, she's like, "Oh, I've just run a half marathon PB. What's my reward?" It's like faster intervals. Yeah, because it's like it's a continual challenge, and that's how you get faster. You know, like if you're capable of running a 40-minute 10k and you're doing your intervals at 4:15 per k pace, you're wasting your time.
Right.
Really, unless you're knackered and had a bad day. But if you want to get faster, you've got to be running faster, biking faster, etc. So you go through this constant cycle of, you know, you've done it yourself, right? You get a new FTP. Those, you know, 843, 663, all of those sessions feel really hard for a while, and then you start like, okay, I can do that now. Then it feels easy. Then it's probably time for a retest. Yeah.
So if something, I want to speak about that a little bit, mate. Like we've established these two different types of training. The sort of, I'm going to say it, you said it, the conversational pace, the more manageable one. Yep. And then I would actually call the second one, like, it's almost hell.
Yep.
Like, it's really hard, and it should be really hard. Yep. And when, like, the progression of hell just stays like it is.
Yeah.
So you just continue to get faster, you continue to get better, and you trust that moves into your racing. Yeah. If you look at the bottom end of the scale, that also, there's a progression there as well, right? So you can, I think you said 6 minutes a K pace is very conversational. Yep. It's at for example, 135 heart rate. Yep. By building that up, what sort of progression do we see on that level as well?
And this is, and I think, and again, if I may, I'm going to be really blunt with this. People just need to switch their ego off. And, you know, developing aerobic capacity is not sexy.
Right.
All right? It's dull.
Right.
And, you know, Mark Allen, you know, you can call it what you like, maximum lipid power. It's like there's nothing that you can call it to make it sexy. But it's the fundamental foundation of triathlon performance. So switch your ego off. If you need to run at 8 minutes a K for a while to make it happen, do it. And what will happen is, let's say if we've identified through whatever means, and there is testing and all the rest of it, if we've identified that your optimal heart rate for running at is 140, run at 140, right, and you'll get faster. I absolutely guarantee it.
Right.
And you've seen countless evidence that I presented that, and even, you know, myself, I got back into full training probably 3 weeks ago. My first run was dreadful, right? You know, and I sucked it up, and you know, I think a couple of weeks ago, I run like sort of 5:15 a K at 140. It's not a problem.
It's not an issue. So it comes, mate. You said that, you quoted there Mark Allen, one of the sort of, I guess, the greats of the sport, really, mate. It's I think that maybe is where people get a little bit distorted. Like, is this a hobby or is this really a sport? You know, are people doing triathlon just because, you know, they want to lose a little bit of weight, and so therefore is it okay to be average and not to push and not to have those high intensity sessions and those building ones? Or should training be hell often? Like, is there any point in doing it if it's not going to be?
I think it depends.
Mate, you can be as controversial as you like.
It depends what you want. If you want to win races,
yeah,
plodding around Al Qudra for an hour at a time isn't going to help you.
Right.
If you wish to get off the couch and have some fun in a nice social environment, then totally. But again, to go back to my original statement, you know, if that's what you're doing, don't expect to be standing on podiums.
Yeah.
It should be, for most people, it should be fun most of the time. And
right.
like for me, those sort of threshold intervals, all right, it's tough while you're doing it, but it's actually, you look back and think, do you know what? I feel amazing.
Yeah.
I feel absolutely unbelievably good after a horrific bike session.
Right.
You know, yesterday morning, first thing, I was on the track at like 7 o'clock and got home at 9 and like, I just couldn't wait to rip into work. I was like, I'm just so pumped I want to get into it.
Yeah.
And it should be fun but tough. And
right.
But to go back to the you know, weight loss and all the rest of it, again, you see a lot of people at these races and they're perhaps carrying a kilo or two more than they might.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing your long aerobic stuff at an intensity that allows you to burn fat, you're wasting your time.
Right.
And again, you know, the high intensity stuff should be high intensity enough so that you're still sort of burning calories for hours and hours afterwards. And that's just work at either end of the scale. Don't waste your time in the middle.
Where's the point though, mate, that, you know, when someone rocks up or someone takes up the sport for the first time, there's obviously positive encouragement. They've just peeled themselves off the couch.
Yep.
But where's the point that they just need a punch in the face to say, stop plodding, stop, you lost 10 kilos, well done, but you're still 15 kilos overweight. Where's the point that they just need a real reality check to say, you know, that's not really the sport. The sport's got you off the couch, but now it's like, why are you accepting sort of pretty average results? And because I see it a lot, mate. Like people are really happy that they've got into this sport and stuff. And I think it's amazing when people move. I think that's great. But it's almost like you can take any weight loss story that we've got, and perhaps Mohammed's one of the biggest ones. Like, if Mohammed lost 50 kilos, for anyone, that's freaking amazing. Yeah. Like, it's really cool. But for him, if we'd have stopped at 50 kilos, he'd still be running around at 140. Yeah. Like, and that's a disaster. And I see it in triathlon as well. I see these people, they've got off the couch, they've taken maybe their sprint distance time down from 2.5, 3 hours to they've just scraped under 2, and they're super happy. Yeah. What's the point that people just really need a reality check?
Do you know, I was talking about this yesterday, and actually I think the problem is that Ironman racing as a brand has gotten soft, and you know, we've now got right, it's gotten soft. 17-hour cutoff for an Ironman race, 8.5 hour for a half. You know, now we've got rolling swim starts because people are getting a bit stressed at the start, and it's like, man, it's called Ironman, it's meant to be tough. And I think they should change the cutoff times. And for me, you know, and I'm going to be careful and choose my words carefully here, but I think 17 hours is not an athletic accomplishment for a fit and healthy 30 to 40-year-old person. You know, it gives you, I mean, 2 hours and 20 minutes for the swim cutoff. It's an absolute joke. You barely have to move forwards to make the cutoff time. You know, and then, you know, it gives you you could basically poodle around on the bike and walk a marathon and still finish. And is that an Ironman, or is that somebody who's patient?
I remember when we went to equipment kit inspection at NDS. I was stood next to this one guy, and he said to me, "Are you going to run?" And I sort of looked at him. I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "Are you planning on running?" I was like, "Yeah, mate, I'm planning on running." He goes, "Oh, I'm just going to walk." And his plan was to walk the whole of the MDS, but that's what I think is completely screwed up. Is that at the end of the day, the guy that won gets a completion medal,
he gets the same
and
medal.
He finished it in like a ridiculous time, averaging about 3.5 minutes a K.
Yeah, for me, other than for personal pride, it takes away any incentive for anyone to get faster. And I'm not saying that everyone should be striving to break 10 hours or, because there is a limit to...
But there should be some aggression in the goal, right?
Yeah. And for me, it's just to get better.
Yeah.
And I don't care if you take 13, 14, 15, 16 hours, as long as you're striving to get faster and faster week by week.
Yeah.
And improve, get better at life and all that sort of stuff that we talk about.
Yeah.
Like if you just want to stay the same, you're wasting your time and money paying somebody to coach you for a start. You might as well just go and do the same thing that you did last week.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yep.
In your opinion,
yep.
percentage-wise, how many people need to be punched in the face and told to sort their shit out and go faster and do things properly, and how many people are actually doing it right in the triathlon world?
How many males have body fat percentages under 12%?
Right.
Not many. How many females are under 18? And I think those are generous percentages.
Right. So that's from a body composition.
And if you're carrying weight that you don't need to carry, you're slowing yourself down, and that's a man-made handicap. Right?
So that's almost like number one.
Yeah.
So forget about the flashy bike.
Lose weight.
Yeah.
Like, I've just upgraded from Ultegra to Dura Ace. Why did you do that? Because it's 200 grams lighter. It's like, mate, you're 10 kilos overweight.
Get out.
Get rid of that. Get out of my office.
Yeah.
If you're carrying weight, get rid of it. It's not. Look, weight loss isn't easy.
For sure.
But it's simple.
Right.
Okay. Eat better.
Yeah.
Train smarter.
Right.
And be prepared to be hungry from time to time. It's not a crime. Okay?
Right.
So weight loss, yes. Train and really stick to the same things. Like, do your easy stuff easy and do your hard stuff really hard. Like, really, really hard till it hurts.
Yeah.
And if you come away from I'm doing some air quotes here. If you're coming away from a hard interval session here and you haven't broken sweat, you might as well have sat on the couch for an hour. And I don't know whether that sounds blunt or not, but people don't.
It's pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Some people really like to suffer, and typically they're the guys that are at the front end of the race
that do better.
Yeah.
So we've got one marker there, around 12% body fat for guys, around 18 for girls.
Yeah.
Swim speed, what's sort of, and I know it's difficult, mate, because it's across three disciplines. I could swim quite slow, but I could be dynamite on the bike and the run. But what do you look like? What should people, people may be thinking, actually, maybe I haven't progressed much, and maybe they're actually still listening and like us, and they're like, what should I really be aiming for? I mean, maybe in your CSS or in your FTP for the bike. What are some good benchmarks there?
I'm going to say. And look, for swimming especially, and more than anything else, the technique is the limiter on your swim speed, over a long distance. And most people have rubbish technique.
Right.
And it's like, it's okay for you, you're a natural. It's like, I became a natural by swimming my ass off for 15 hours a week when I was a kid for 6 years. Right?
Yeah.
I think I earned it.
Yeah, right.
So fix your technique, see a coach. I'm not a swim coach.
Yeah.
There's a few good ones around, so fix your technique and be prepared to be patient, because drills are boring.
Right.
But they will make you go faster. I think for anybody to have a CSS of more than 2 minutes per 100,
right,
we shouldn't be seeing too much of that. We should be looking to get under that. Okay. Now, some people are happy to accept that.
Yeah.
And just leave it there.
Yeah.
And we have a mutual friend who's a great example of that, because he's an amazing biker and runner and just doesn't care about the swim. So he swims once a week to keep ticking over and dominates the bike run.
Kills the bike. Yeah.
And wins races. So that's fine. Biking I think you better express it as watts per kilo rather than...
Yeah, fair enough.
Rather than just pure watts, because you can't expect a 60-kilo guy to have a 300 FTP.
Yeah.
I think for guys, as a broad measure, 3 watts per kilo at threshold.
That's where you want to be aiming
would be a minimum expectation.
Right.
Girls... Well, it's the same, really. I don't see why it should be any different. Yeah. So if you're a 60-kilo girl, 180 watts FTP is
cool.
Is and if it's less than that, it needs to be more.
Right. And running-wise, what sort of paces should we be looking at? Again, it's difficult because we understand that it's multi-sport and you might be a seriously strong runner, but as a target to be sort of better than the couch potato.
Yeah, I think 60-minute 10K would be a minimum expectation. And again, that might not come today, tomorrow, but we should all be striving towards that.
Right. there's definitely some of the stats that people need to aim towards. And as well, mate, I mean, the cool thing, and we'll sort of wrap up with this, that one of the coolest things is the second point that I wanted to bring in with regards to you. You not only raced in 2011 in Kona, but you also raced the year later,
yes,
a year later in a short course. Yeah. How talk us through sort of that transition, and you know, are people cut out for long courses or short courses, and what should we generally be looking at?
I think people's physiology sort of points them towards a certain type of race, and I think I'm a big guy for a triathlete. Even
right.
if I'm super skinny, I'm still heavy
right.
for a triathlete. So I think, you know, my physiology was better suited towards short distance racing because you're just not carrying that weight for so long. Some people are small framed and suit longer distances better.
Right.
But you know, honestly, as I say, for new people coming into the sport, get fast at short distance racing, and then
first,
sort your swimming out,
so
sort your running technique out.
The dream of sort of, I want to start triathlon, I want to do an Ironman, should be, that's fine, but perhaps 18 months or 2 years down the track.
Yeah, I want to get decent at triathlon.
Right.
I want to get that power up, swim speed up, run speed up, and then
do something
start
with
to go longer. And I wouldn't wish to discourage anyone from having a massive dream of saying, right, Ironman is it, but from your training is way more fun when it doesn't take as long to cover the same distance. I can promise you.
I can imagine. Flanners, we've been rambling for quite a while. Hopefully there's a lot there, mate. Some super cool information. You never answered the percentage. I'm going to tell you my answer.
10%.
I reckon only 10% are doing it absolutely right. I think 90% need a little bit of a clip in the face. Or, to be honest, mate, let's not be too nasty to them. They need to understand the process. I think you've broken it down super well there.
Yep.
I'm sure a lot of people will get a lot from this. And maybe we should do this again. We've gone for nearly an hour.
Right. I listen to the podcast every week and think I must get involved in it. Well,
mate, we're midway through the season. Maybe we'll bring you sort of later on in the season when there's been a few more races.
Season
we can
roundup.
Talk about some more of the results and stuff. But we've sort of scratched the surface. But I hope people, I'm sure from what you said, mate, people can really get an idea of what they should be doing. And obviously, folks, if you do have any questions, drop Flanners an email, winning@innerfight.com. He will get that email. Leave some comments. Sorry that we were brutal and honest, but
I'm a nice guy, really.
I'm not sorry at all. We're nice people. We want you to do the best. It's like a disclaimer at the end, isn't it? But that's just the way it is. I think people need to be told straight, and I think to perform at the top end of triathlon and to really get good results, and you know, people need to understand how it's at, and I think your approach is pretty much sums that up. So,
good.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Cheers.